So I should probably start by saying that my relationship with my family has always been complicated. Growing up, I was never the golden child, like my older brother Ruben, 32, or my younger sister Charlotte, 26. Ruben became a doctor, and Charlotte owns these two boutique shops that honestly aren't even that profitable, but everyone acts like she's some kind of business genius. Meanwhile, I've just been the middle child who never lived up to his potential, according to my mother. I moved out at 22 and have been renting ever since. My mom, Susan, 58, never lets me forget how disappointed she is that I don't own property yet. She constantly brings up how Ruben bought his first house at 25 and how Charlotte has such a good head for business. What none of them know is that I've actually been doing really well for myself. I work in tech, and while my job title sounds boring AF to them, I've been making serious money for the past 4 years. The thing is, I never bothered to correct their assumptions about me because, honestly, I got tired of trying to impress them. My accomplishments were always minimized while my siblings were exaggerated, so I just stopped sharing. I let them think what they wanted. Fast forward to last weekend, our annual family reunion at my parents' lake house. Everyone was there, my parents, siblings, Aunt Karen, and her perfect son Walter, Uncle Bob, and his kids, and like 20 other relatives I barely talked to. I almost didn't go this year, but my dad guilted me into it, saying mom had been asking about me. Yeah, right. So there I was, nursing a beer on the deck, trying to avoid conversation, when my mom grabbed the microphone they were using for karaoke. At first, I thought she was going to make some generic toast, but then she pointed right at me. Everyone, I want you to look at my failure of a son, 28, still renting, no wife, no kids. His brother is a doctor, his sister owns two shops, but this one? A complete waste of my genes. I should have aborted him when I had the chance. The entire deck went quiet for like 2 seconds, and then people started laughing. Like it was some kind of joke. I'm sitting there just staring at her, and she's got this smug smile on her face like she's so clever. Then my Aunt Karen chimes in from across the deck. At least my son bought me a house? More laughter. My cousin Walter is standing there smirking. Uncle Bob, already drunk at 3 p.m. as usual, adds, maybe he's just slow. Some kids never amount to anything. And then I notice my cousins Asher and Skylar recording everything on their phones. Asher even says the title out loud as he's recording. When your cousin is the family loser. I could tell they were already thinking about the views they'd get posting this online. Everyone's looking at me, waiting for me to either blow up or slink away embarrassed. But I just smiled and said, you're absolutely right, Mom. I'm a complete disappointment. I stayed for another hour, making small talk, acting like everything was fine. My mom kept glancing at me, probably disappointed I didn't make a scene. What she doesn't know is that I was calculating exactly how to hit back where it would hurt the most. See, what none of them realize is that I've been the silent investor behind a lot of their successes. Charlotte's shops? I fronted the capital when the bank wouldn't approve her loan. The house Walter bought for Aunt Karen? I'm the actual mortgage holder through one of my investment LLCs. And Uncle Bob's construction company that's been booming lately? I've been sending him clients from my network and took over their digital marketing. I've been quietly helping my family for years because, despite everything, I wanted them to succeed. But they've never shown an ounce of gratitude. Instead, they use their success to put me down. So that night, after I drove back to my sad little apartment, Mom's words, I made a few quick phone calls. I contacted my lawyer, my financial advisor, and a few business associates. I set some things in motion that would show them exactly who the family loser really is. The next morning at 6 a.m., my phone started blowing up. Mom had called 47 times. Text from my dad saying, son, this is an emergency. My sister frantically messaging that she was going to lose everything. I haven't responded to any of them yet. Instead, I'm writing this post while sipping coffee on my balcony, watching the sunrise and contemplating just how far I'm willing to take this. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not going to just smile and take their abuse. They wanted to humiliate me? Fine. But they are about to learn that I'm not the failure they think I am. Not even close. Update coming soon. As soon as I figure out exactly how scorched I want this earth to be. Update 1. I didn't expect my post to blow up like that. Woke up to hundreds of notifications on my phone this morning. After reading your comments, I figured I should clarify a few things before getting into what's happened since. So, apparently, a lot of you are wondering how I ended up being the secret backbone of my family's finances without them realizing it. It's honestly not as complicated as it sounds. 4 years ago, I joined this tech startup that hit it big with an acquisition last year. My stock options were worth way more than I ever expected, like life-changing money. But instead of buying a Tesla and flexing on Instagram like half my coworkers, I decided to be smart about it. I set up a couple of LLCs for investment purposes and started looking for opportunities. Around the same time, my sister Charlotte was trying to open her first boutique. She kept getting rejected for loans because she had zero business experience and a shit credit score from maxing out credit cards in college. My mom was going on and on about how Charlotte just needed a little help to prove herself. So I offered to be an angel investor through one of my LLCs. Charlotte didn't even read the paperwork properly. She just saw the money and signed. The agreement gave me 51% ownership. Same deal with Aunt Karen's house. Walter couldn't qualify for the mortgage on his own. Turns out his amazing job barely covers his car payments. I set up the financing through another LLC with the mortgage in my name. They make payments to the LLC, not knowing it's mine. Uncle Bob's construction business was failing until I started sending him clients and paid for a complete digital overhaul. He signed a contract giving me 40% of the business, but I'm pretty sure he was too drunk to remember the details. The point is, I've been quietly propping up everyone who's been shitting on me for years. And after that microphone incident, I decided it was time to pull the rug out. So after the reunion, I made 3 calls. To my lawyer, instructing him to send formal notices to Charlotte, Walter, and Uncle Bob about immediate changes to our business arrangements, to my financial advisor to freeze several accounts and credit lines, to my tech buddy who handles the websites and digital marketing for Charlotte's shops and Uncle Bob's business. By 6 a.m. the next morning, the dominoes had started falling. Charlotte's suppliers got emails saying her account was on hold due to payment verification issues. Her shop websites went down for maintenance. Uncle Bob's scheduling system crashed, and all his upcoming jobs were suddenly marked as pending review. I finally answered my phone around noon. My mom was the first call I took. She was screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What's happening? What did you do? Fix this right now." I let her yell for about 30 seconds before I cut her off. I told her I was simply exercising my rights as the majority owner of Charlotte's boutiques and a significant investor in Uncle Bob's business. She got real quiet for a second, then tried to tell me I was confused, that I didn't own anything, so I started reading the contract terms to her. That's when she switched tactics. Suddenly I was being cruel. This was going to destroy the family. How could I do this to my own sister? I just laughed and asked her if she remembered what she said about me at the reunion. She tried to claim she was just joking, that everyone knew it was just a bit of family teasing. I reminded her that she said she should have aborted me. That's when she hung up. My dad called next. He's always been the peacemaker, the one who tries to smooth things over when mom goes too far. He started with the usual. Mom didn't mean it. She was just showing off for the family. We all say things we regret. I asked him why he never stands up for me when she's humiliating me. He didn't have an answer for that. Then Charlotte showed up at my apartment. I wasn't planning to let her in, but my neighbor was in the hallway, so I didn't want to make a scene. As soon as my door closed, she started crying, like full-on sobbing about how she was going to lose everything. Her reputation would be ruined. She had orders she couldn't fulfill. I sat on my couch and just watched her meltdown. When she finally stopped to breathe, I asked her if she'd seen the video our cousins posted. She looked confused, so I pulled it up on my phone and made her watch it. The whole thing. Her face went from confused to embarrassed to angry. She tried to claim she had nothing to do with what Mom said. I pointed out that she was laughing along with everyone else. Then she switched to saying I was overreacting, that I was being too sensitive. That's when I lost it. I told her she'd been taking credit for success that I funded for years. That every time Mom praised her business acumen, it was actually my money and my connections making her look good. That the only reason she had anything was because I decided to help her. And I could take it all away just as easily. She slapped me, hard, left a mark and everything. I grabbed her wrist before she could do it again and told her to get the fuck out of my apartment. She tried to push past me to the bathroom, saying she needed to fix her makeup. I blocked the hallway and told her she could fix her face in her car. When she realized I wasn't budging, she shoved me against the wall and called me a pathetic loser who was just jealous of her success. I laughed in her face and told her to check her email for the official notice from my lawyer. That's when the color drained from her face. She ran out, slamming the door so hard one of my frames fell off the wall. An hour later, Aunt Karen was blowing up my phone. Apparently, Walter had received some kind of notice about the mortgage. I sent her to voicemail. Uncle Bob texted something incoherent about his website being down and clients canceling jobs. My phone kept buzzing all day with messages from various family members. Most of them had no idea why I was suddenly being difficult, but a few had clearly been filled in and were trying different approaches. Guilt, anger, fake concern about my mental health. I ignored most of them until my mom sent a group text to the entire family. Brett is having some kind of breakdown. He's making false claims about owning Charlotte's businesses and other family properties. We're looking into legal options. Please don't engage with him until we sort this out. That's when I decided to go nuclear. I forwarded all the contracts, investment agreements, and ownership documents to everyone in the family. Then I added a simple message. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm just done being the family punching bag while secretly funding your successes. Talk to your lawyers if you want, but make sure they understand what majority stakeholder means first. My cousin Skylar called almost immediately. He sounded genuinely shocked. He asked if I was seriously the owner of all this stuff. When I confirmed it, he got quiet. Then asked if the video they posted was part of why I was doing this. I told him it was the final straw. He actually apologized and offered to take it down. Too little, too late. My mom is now telling everyone I've been plotting this for years, that I deliberately set up these businesses to fail. My dad is begging me to be reasonable and think of the family. Charlotte is threatening to sue me for deception. LOL, good luck with that. Uncle Bob showed up drunk at my apartment building last night, but security wouldn't let him up. He caused enough of a scene that they almost called the cops. The thing is, I could fix everything with a few phone calls. I could turn the websites back on, unfreeze the accounts, tell the suppliers everything is fine. But every time I consider it, I remember my mom's face as she announced to our entire family that I was a waste of her genes. So instead, I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to discuss next steps. They want to fight? Let's see how well they do when they realize just how much of their success has been built on my investments. I'll update again after the meeting. This is far from over. Update 2. Okay, so first I want to say thanks for all the support. I honestly wasn't expecting so many people to be on my side. A few of you asked if I feel bad about what I'm doing to my family. The answer is, not really. I mean, maybe a tiny bit about my dad since he's always been caught in the middle, but he's also never stood up for me. So anyway, I met with my lawyer yesterday morning. His office is in one of those fancy downtown buildings with the intimidating lobby and security desk where you have to sign in. I got there early and spent like 20 minutes just scrolling through all your comments while waiting. My lawyer Jake has been handling my business stuff for the past 3 years. He's actually the one who suggested setting up the LLCs in the first place. Jake spent the first half hour just going through all the contracts again, making sure everything was airtight. He kept saying things like the agreements were solid, fully enforceable, and my family wouldn't have a legal leg to stand on. He did warn me that family disputes can get messy regardless of how clear the paperwork is. I was in the middle of explaining the whole situation when my phone started blowing up again. My brother Ruben, who had been surprisingly quiet through all this, was calling. I ignored it the first time, but when he called again immediately, I figured something must be happening. When I picked up, Ruben sounded different, not angry like Charlotte or panicked like my mom, just tired. He said the family was falling apart and asked if we could talk in person. I agreed to meet him for lunch, mostly because Ruben has always been the least awful to me. Sure, he never stopped Mom from being terrible, but he also never actively joined in. I told Jake I needed to go, and he reminded me not to make any promises or agreements without running them by him first. Smart guy. I met Ruben at this diner halfway between his place and mine. When I got there, he was already at a booth in the back, looking at his phone. He looked up when I approached, and damn, he looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. Ruben started by saying he had no idea about any of this. My investments, the ownership stakes, none of it. I believe him. Unlike Charlotte, he's never been involved in the family financial drama. He asked straight up if what I claimed was true, if I really owned half of Charlotte's shops and Uncle Bob's business, and if I actually held Aunt Karen's mortgage. I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the documents. His face, when he realized it was all true, I almost felt bad, almost. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Why? Why did I help them all secretly instead of just telling everyone I was successful? I told him the truth, that I got tired of trying to impress Mom, that no matter what I did, it was never good enough, that after years of being the family disappointment, I just stopped trying to change their minds. I reminded him how Mom always compared us, always made me feel less than, even when we were kids. Ruben actually apologized. Said he knew Mom was harder on me but never understood why. He admitted he should have stood up for me more. It was the first genuine conversation we'd had in years. But then he switched gears and started trying to convince me to back down. Said Charlotte was having panic attacks, that Uncle Bob's workers might not get paid, that Aunt Karen was worried about losing her house. Classic guilt trip. I told him I wasn't backing down, not after what happened at the reunion. He tried to argue that it was just Mom being Mom, that I was taking it too far. I pulled up the video on my phone and made him watch it again. Asked him how he'd feel if someone said they should have aborted him. He didn't have an answer for that. We were interrupted when my phone pinged with a text. It was from my cousin Skylar. Dude, there's an emergency family meeting happening at your parents' house tonight at 7. Everyone's going to be there. Thought you should know. I showed Ruben the text. He looked away, then admitted they were planning to figure out how to handle the situation. Apparently, my mom was convinced she could find a way to undo everything if they all worked together. I laughed and told Ruben I'd be there. He looked surprised, then worried. Said maybe that wasn't a good idea, that everyone was pretty upset. I told him that was the point. When I got home, I had an email from Aunt Karen. This was weird because we never email each other. It was this long, rambling message about how she always thought of me as a son, how proud she was of me for being independent, and how she was sure we could work something out about the house situation. The fakeness was so transparent it was almost funny. This woman who had been mocking me for years was suddenly pretending we had some special bond. I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the afternoon preparing for the meeting. I gathered all the relevant documents, made some notes, and even put together a simple presentation on my tablet. If they wanted to talk business, I was going to be ready. I showed up at my parents' house exactly at 7. My dad opened the door, looking shocked to see me. He started stammering about how they weren't expecting me yet, how they needed more time to prepare. I pushed past him into the living room. Everyone went quiet when I walked in. My mom was sitting in her usual armchair. Charlotte was on the couch with her husband. Uncle Bob was by the fireplace with Aunt Karen and Walter. A few other relatives were scattered around. All eyes on me. My mom recovered first. She stood up and tried to hug me like nothing was wrong. I stepped back and asked what this meeting was about. She fake laughed and said they just wanted to clear up some misunderstandings. I sat down in the one empty chair and pulled out my tablet. Said there were no misunderstandings. I owned 51% of Charlotte's shops, 40% of Uncle Bob's business. And yes, Aunt Karen, I hold the mortgage on your house through my LLC. Uncle Bob tried to claim I was lying, that he'd never signed anything giving me part of his business. I pulled up the contract on my tablet and passed it to him, watching his face as he read through it. Recognition slowly dawning. Worth every penny I'd invested. Aunt Karen started crying, asking how I could do this to family. I reminded her of what she said at the reunion. She tried to claim she was just joking, that everyone teases family members. Walter jumped in, saying I was being petty and overreacting. That's when I showed them something none of them knew about. I pulled up the mortgage documents for Walter's condo, the one he lives in, not the house he bought for his mom. Turns out when he refinanced last year, guess who the bank sold the mortgage to? One of my investment groups. His face when he realized I could potentially foreclose on his home too, priceless. Charlotte's husband, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. He asked what I wanted, what it would take to end this. Smart guy. The only one thinking practically. I laid out my terms. A public apology from everyone who participated in humiliating me at the reunion. My mom and Aunt Karen would have to make a video retracting everything they said. The cousins who posted the video would have to post a new one explaining the truth. I would maintain my ownership stakes but would allow operations to continue. If they acknowledged my contribution, monthly family meetings where everyone's contributions were recognized. My mom immediately refused. Said she'd never apologize for telling the truth about me. Charlotte started crying again, saying I was destroying everything she'd worked for. Uncle Bob stormed out, slamming the front door. My dad tried to play peacemaker, suggesting a compromise where I would just quietly go back to supporting everyone without the public apologies. I laughed in his face. Aunt Karen, always the practical one when it comes to money, asked what would happen if they refused my terms. I smiled and said I'd start selling my stakes to the highest bidders. Charlotte's shops would probably be bought by her biggest competitor. Uncle Bob's client list would be valuable to several other local companies. And as for her house, well, the real estate market was hot right now. The room erupted, everyone talking over each other, some yelling, some pleading. My mom stood up and pointed at me, screaming that I was no son of hers, that this proved she was right about me all along. I stood up, completely calm, and told her she was right about one thing. I was a disappointment as a son. I'd spent years trying to help this family, investing my money, my time, my energy into making them successful, and all I got in return was mockery and contempt. As I was leaving, my cousin Skylar stopped me at the door. He looked nervous, but asked if we could talk privately for a minute. I agreed, and we stepped outside. Skylar confessed that he'd always felt bad about how the family treated me, said he only went along with it because he was afraid of becoming the next target. Then he asked something that caught me off guard. Was it true that I'd turned down a job offer in Seattle last year? I was surprised he knew about that. It wasn't something I'd told anyone in the family. Turns out his girlfriend works at the same company that had tried to recruit me, one of the biggest tech firms in the country. She'd seen my name on some paperwork and mentioned it to him. That job would have doubled my salary and given me major career advancement. But I turned it down because it would have meant moving across the country, away from the family businesses I was secretly supporting. I sacrificed my own career growth to prop up the people who were mocking me. I confirmed it was true and added that it wasn't the only opportunity I'd passed up to stay close to family. Skylar looked genuinely shocked. He asked if the others knew about this. I told him they didn't, and I wasn't planning to tell them. But now I'm thinking maybe I should. Maybe at our next family meeting, I'll let them know exactly what their constant belittling has cost me. Because that's the thing none of them understand yet. This isn't just about money or business ownership. This is about years of sacrifices they never appreciated. Opportunities I gave up to help people who couldn't even treat me with basic respect. And I'm done sacrificing. The family has 3 days to accept my terms. After that, I start making calls to interested buyers. And there's one more thing none of them know about yet. Final update. First of all, you guys are insane. My inbox literally exploded over the past few days. I can't believe how invested everyone is in my family drama. Some of you guessed parts of what was coming, but nobody got the full picture. So the 3-day deadline I gave my family came and went yesterday. I spent most of that time ignoring their calls and texts while working on the thing I hinted at in my last post. The one more thing they didn't know about. Turns out that when you have the kind of money I do, recruiters are constantly trying to poach you. I've had this one persistent headhunter from a major tech company in California who's been after me for months. The salary they're offering is honestly insane. Like double what I make now, plus stock options, signing bonus, the whole package. I've been putting them off because I was tied to all these family businesses. But after the reunion incident, I decided to take another look. I spent those 3 days negotiating the final details. I'm not just taking the job, I'm taking it with immediate start and full relocation package. Oh, and I signed the paperwork yesterday afternoon. On the morning of the deadline, I got a text from my dad asking to meet for breakfast. Just him, no one else. I was suspicious, but decided to give him a chance. We met at this little diner near my place, the same one where I'd met Ruben a few days earlier. Dad looked like hell. His eyes were all bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days. He had this stack of papers with him that I recognized as printouts of the contracts I'd sent to everyone. He started by apologizing. Not for Mom, but for himself. Said he'd always known Mom was harder on me, but he'd convinced himself it was just her way, and that she didn't really mean it. Hearing her say what she did at the reunion and then watching her double down when confronted made him realize how wrong he'd been. I asked him why Mom had always been like that with me specifically. That's when he told me something I never knew. Apparently, when Mom got pregnant with me, they were having serious marriage problems. Mom had actually wanted a divorce, but finding out she was pregnant changed things. They stayed together for the baby. Me. But Mom always resented it. She'd had all these plans that got put on hold, and somehow, I became the physical representation of her trapped life. It explains a lot, honestly. Why she always seemed to hate everything I did. Why nothing was ever good enough. She wasn't really judging me. She was still angry about the life she thought she could have had. Dad said he'd been trying to get Mom to agree to my terms, but she was being stubborn. Charlotte and Uncle Bob were willing to apologize, but Mom kept saying she'd rather lose everything than admit she was wrong. Classic Susan. I told Dad about the job offer in California. His face just fell. He asked when I was leaving, and I told him 2 weeks. He started tearing up, which was weird because I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen my dad cry. He asked if there was anything he could do to make me stay. I told him it was too late. I'd already signed the contract and paid the deposit on an apartment. That's when he slid a folder across the table. Inside was a formal offer to buy out my shares in Charlotte's shops and Uncle Bob's business, along with a proposal to refinance Aunt Karen's house. The offer was, actually pretty reasonable. Not what I could get on the open market, but close enough. I told him I'd think about it, but I wasn't making any promises. When I got home, I had an email from Skylar with a link to a private YouTube video. It was him and some of my other cousins making a formal apology for the recording and for how they'd treated me over the years. It seemed genuine, especially from Skylar. At the end, he mentioned that the original video had been taken down and asked if we could talk before I left town. I was actually considering the buyout offer when my phone rang. It was Charlotte. She started with an apology that sounded rehearsed, but got more emotional as she went on. She admitted she'd taken me for granted, that she couldn't have built her business without me, and that she was sorry for laughing at the reunion. I asked her if Mom had put her up to calling. She hesitated, then admitted Mom had told everyone to fix this however they could, but that her apology was real. She said she'd been going through the business accounts and finally understood how much I'd been helping her behind the scenes. That's when my buzzer rang. I checked the camera and saw my mom standing outside my building. Fefes? I buzzed her in, mostly because I didn't want her making a scene in the lobby. When I opened the door, she pushed past me into the apartment without saying a word. She looked around my place with this judgmental expression, the same one she's had my entire life. Then she spotted the half-packed boxes in the corner. I'd already started packing for the move. She asked where I was going, her voice all tight and controlled. I told her about the California job. She got this look on her face. Not sad, not angry, just calculating. Like she was trying to figure out how this affected her. Then she did the most Susan thing ever. She sat down on my couch, uninvited, and said we needed to clear the air before I left, that the family was in chaos and I needed to fix the mess I'd made. I actually laughed in her face, told her the only mess was the one she created when she decided to publicly humiliate her own son. She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't having it. For once in my life, I talked over her. I laid it all out, how she'd treated me my entire life, how nothing I did was ever good enough, how I'd been secretly propping up the family she was so proud of while she continued to put me down. I told her about the job offers I'd turned down to stay close, the opportunities I'd passed up to help family who didn't appreciate it. She sat there silently, which was weird because my mom never lets anyone finish a sentence if she can help it. When I finally stopped talking, she did something I never expected. She started crying, not like subtle, elegant tears, full-on ugly crying. Mascara running down her face, shoulders shaking, the works. Between sobs, she started saying she was sorry, that she knew she'd been awful to me, that she didn't deserve forgiveness, that watching everything fall apart made her realize how much I'd been doing for everyone, that Dad had threatened to leave her if she didn't make things right. I just stood there, completely thrown off. In 29 years, I had never ever heard my mother apologize for anything, and I didn't buy it for a second. I asked her straight up, was she sorry for how she'd treated me my whole life? Or was she just sorry that her comfortable world was collapsing? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I told her I'd consider the buyout offer from Dad, but I was still taking the California job, that our relationship would never be the same, apology or not. She started to argue, but I cut her off and told her it was time for her to leave. She stood up, suddenly composed again, and asked if I would at least come to dinner before I left town. For Dad's sake, she said. I told her I'd think about it. As she was leaving, she turned back and said something that actually got to me. Your brother and sister miss their brother. They're not perfect, but they're not me either. The next day, I met with my lawyer again to go over the buyout offer. He thought it was fair, but reminded me I was under no obligation to accept. I decided to counter with my own terms. I'd sell my shares in Charlotte's shops, but maintain a small percentage that would give me some passive income. I'd keep my stake in Uncle Bob's business, but sign a management agreement that let him run day-to-day operations. I'd transfer Aunt Karen's mortgage to a local bank, but with the condition that my name stayed on the deed as co-owner, I'd require quarterly financial reports from all businesses I maintained a stake in. Basically, I'd loosen the noose but keep a hand on the rope. I also added one non-negotiable condition. My mom would have to make a public apology at the next family gathering, just as public as her original insult had been. I sent the counteroffer to my dad, who said he'd discuss it with everyone. 2 days later, I got their response. They accepted all terms, including the public apology. The family dinner happened last night. It was awkward AF, but not as bad as I expected. Ruben and I actually had a decent conversation about his work. Charlotte was overly nice, but seemed genuinely relieved that we'd reached an agreement. Uncle Bob stayed mostly sober and thanked me for being reasonable. Aunt Karen couldn't quite meet my eyes. And my mom? She gave the apology. It wasn't tear-filled or dramatic, but it was direct. She acknowledged what she'd said was wrong, that I had been instrumental in the family's success, and that she regretted how she'd treated me over the years. Was it sincere? Honestly, I don't know. And at this point, I don't really care. The power dynamic has shifted permanently. They all know I could have destroyed everything, but chose not to. That's enough for me. I'm still taking the California job. I leave next week. My relationship with my family will never be the same, but maybe that's a good thing. The old relationship was built on lies, that I was a failure, that they were successes, that I needed them more than they needed me. Now at least we're dealing with reality. This morning, I got a text from Skylar asking if he could come help me pack this weekend. I said sure. Turns out he's applied for a coding boot camp and wants some advice. Kid might be all right after all. So that's it. Not the scorched earth some of you were hoping for, but not a Hallmark reconciliation either. Just a messy, complicated family situation with a messy, complicated resolution. Though, I gotta say, the look on my mom's face when she realized just how badly she'd miscalculated? Almost worth the 29 years of bullshit. Almost.